Welcome to the Money Matrix podcast powered by MBank. Today is going to be specifically geared towards loan programs, non-QM specific, how to qualify, how underwriting works, and just the overall how to get a loan through.
So we're not going to talk about a clarification on tariffs on China?
We can just do that right now.
It went
The
from
government just clarified it went from 125. It's actually 145.
Just checking. Okay,
Yes.
we're good.
So,
Okay.
So your hockey stick went from 250 to 275 right now. Maybe even 280.
And to clarify, it was 120 24 hours before that.
Yikes.
That's called inflation, kids.
So
What if you run to the store now and get it?
It's too late. Maybe. I mean, maybe. I have enough. I stockpile. But still, like, everything's going to... Everything we're wearing, everything's going to be...
You got a garage full of hockey sticks?
I actually do.
You are Canadian.
I do.
Yeah, but they are making a lot of deals right now, so I don't really think it's going to be as
I think
excessive.
he's trying to bring it all back home.
we'll figure
Yep.
it out. Listen. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I'm Meyer Dalal.
I'm Ronan Fishman, a resident alien Canadian American wannabe.
Alan Hastings, loan analyst at MBank.
Jason Mantione, Canada Desk.
So let's start with probably the most popular non-QM loan program, which is the bank statement loan program.
You're going in and out, just so you know.
Oh, yeah? Should I come closer like this?
Yeah.
Perfect. So the bank statement loan program. So as a loan analyst, Alan, Ronan is self-employed.
Yep.
He owns a business. And he makes money. He has money. But tax returns, because the IRS allows him and affords him the ability to write off things,
Right.
don't look as appealing as the big box banks would like.
Right.
So how does one person like that qualify
Got it.
for a
So
mortgage?
Ronan writes off all of his hockey sticks, and his tax returns don't show much income. Got it. So in Ronan's specific situation, what we do here at MBank is we'll look at 12 months of his bank statements as a business owner. We'll look at either the business or his personal if he pulls money from the business. We're going to qualify your income based on your deposits, not what you report to the government as, non-written off income.
Income
So
deposit.
any deposit.
It depends, but yeah, as long as it makes sense for your business, as long as it's not out of line with what you do or your average deposits, yeah, we can use it.
So it's income, though, right? It can't be like transfers. From
Right. If
one-
he's selling his hockey sticks to someone else and he gets some Venmo deposits, we're
That's
not gonna
income.
use those. Not in this case.
And even if the deposits are coming in, and just say it's $100,000, and at the end of the month, there's $5,000 left in the bank account, but the next month they deposit another $100,000.
Right.
It depletes down to $5,000.
That's a good question. Basically, we're looking at those deposits and we're making sense of how the business brings in money. What you spend that money on, where you move it to afterwards, that's up to you.
Okay.
Now, are you
but-
figuring that out, or is a client telling you where to look?
It depends. So at the start of this deal, I would say to you, Ronan, what do you do? And you come to me with your 12 months of bank statements for your...
12 months. That would have been my second
That's correct. You come to me with your 12 months of bank statements for your hockey stick store, and I would see deposits that match what you're telling me. If it looks like a hockey stick store, that's good. If you get a $100,000 deposit on Wednesday and nothing else for the rest of the month, I'm wondering how you run your hockey stick store.
So do you use 100% of that? What are we looking at in terms of qualification? What's the baseline?
Yeah, as a tax return loan, you get to choose what you write off and how much you show. For us on a bank statement loan, flat 50% expense factor across the board. Now, if you're a restaurant and 50% may not be exactly where you're at. If you're a hockey stick salesman and it only costs you $10 for a hockey stick, but you sell them at $100, you may have a 10% expense factor. If yours is less than 50% expense factor, you just need to verify it with an accountant. You get a licensed accountant, write a quick letter that says, my expenses are only 10%, 20%, 30%. And we can use that number. But as a baseline, 50% off the top.
Okay. So assuming he's depositing $100,000 a month, verifiable, that's $50,000.
That's correct.
So that now becomes his baseline on qualifying.
Exactly. That's his income.
Okay. And then what's the next step? So as someone who's looking to purchase, you get the bank statements. What else are you looking for? What else do you need to give him a pre-approval, let's just say, because he wants to buy a home?
I don't blame him. It's a good time. I think the next step is assets. As long as you have the income, the next step is to make sure you can make your down payment. Every property, when you get into contract, you make a deposit up front. It's an earnest deposit. I'll just need to see that. And I'll also need to see any funds you have in the bank that are going to cover the rest of that down payment, closing costs, and a couple months of reserves, just to make sure that you're stable enough to support that loan and that you have the money to close.
Now, what happens if you're short on closing costs? Are there any ways to make that up, or how does that work?
That's an interesting question. There's kind of a nifty trick that is kind of going around. It's not too popular yet, but it's really clever. Basically, you get your sellers to agree to pay part of that closing cost for you. You can get them to issue a credit. You can get them to do discounts, whatever it may be. You can have, as long as your appraisal supports it, you can have your seller say, instead of $650,000, this property is going to cost $660,000. But I'm going to give you a $10,000 seller's credit. So
Yeah, but that always doesn't work because, there is genuinely, because the client ends up paying more. So that's not really
Right.
what I'm thinking about. I mean, a lot of, listen, for the clients that we're educating and we're talking to, we're telling them, hey, instead of negotiating, like Jason did this when he bought his house, instead of negotiating the price, negotiate the closing costs.
That's right.
So, if it's listed at $650 and you're going to negotiate down to $630 or $620,
don't do that.
Get that $30,000 locked
Correct.
in, and then get your seller concession.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of them being your loan amount is based on the sale price of the property. So if you lowered the house price to $630, your loan amount is now an LTV based off of the $630. Whereas if it was $660, $650, whatever it may be, your loan amount's based on that figure, then you get your discounts. So as a percentage, it makes more sense for you to finance more of the house.
Sure. You're in essence financing your closing costs by getting
That's
that
exactly
seller concession. And it's 100% legitimate, allowed, everything.
Completely legit.
Normal course of doing business.
Exactly. The problem is a lot of people aren't educated on that.
It's a dollar for dollar pickup.
Exactly.
So if you have to have $30,000 in closing costs, when you bought your house, how much were your closing costs?
I can't count that high. I don't know, about probably around 50 G's.
So 50,000. So you had to come out of 50. Now, if you
Correct.
got that same house, if you negotiated a seller concession, did you get a discount on the house, or when you bought it, it was
I
like
bought
premium?
in peak COVID, but I also had morons for realtors. Like, it's an understatement. And this is the thing. I think realtors are incredibly hardworking people. I think the professionals are, and there's tons of value in having those professionals. They're just, a good realtor is, once you have one, you never leave them.
Right.
But unfortunately, not of most.
A lot of
are
them
not like
don't know.
No, they don't know,
what
but
they
that's what I'm
don't
saying.
know,
The professionals, and this is why when you work hand in hand with the mortgage broker, like, do you have cross pollination between the two, and they're working together for that client? It's a slam dunk because they not only save the money, they make the transaction seamless. And you know this, right? When it goes sideways, and then everyone starts to panic.
Now it's even more complicated because the buyer's agent doesn't always get paid by the listing,
Right.
by the seller, whereas before it did. So now you have buyer's agents buying and negotiating for their, like we just did a deal where the seller concession
Was to cover
the agent's cost.
Right.
So he didn't even benefit from the purchase because it had to cover the agent's costs, because no agent's going to work for free. So it's either coming from the buyer or from
Yeah.
the transaction.
Yeah.
So assuming we get all that and we get into contract, what's the typical timeline? How long does it take? What else is involved? What are the steps? Because there's a lot of people who just don't understand and don't know what's normal, right?
Right. Home buying's complicated. I think a lot of the bigger banks, your turnaround time's 30 to 60 days, 45 sometimes. Maybe you get lucky. It depends on your team, but at MBank, because it's kind of like a specialized service, we're such, experienced team members in this situation. We've kind of refined the process down to 14 to 21 days. And the faster turnaround time is important because most people who aren't educated and go into the home buying process will start something that they can't finish. And as experts in the field, our name comes up a lot when someone can't get the job done and they need an emergency, answer, because we close the deal. That's what we do.
Yeah, it's hard when you have to come midway through and scramble.
Exactly, right? And so we've kind of become experts at finishing those deals at the last minute for people who are, not sure what they're getting into when they start and realize, oh my goodness, I'm in over my head. That's where we're there to help those people.
Right.
Yeah. So 14 to 21 days for our team.
And at what point does it get handed off to you? I mean, I know they talk to like a loan analyst like Jason, and they analyze and they get assessed up front.
Right.
Where does it go from here to you, and also how much is done up front on this side? I mean, Jason, you want to share a little bit about?
Well, I believe that as far as an analyst, from like an analyst perspective, the more work that we do as far as getting everything in order, all the documentation, everything that is needed before we pass it off, comes into what Alan is saying to the 14, 21-day closing. If the analyst isn't putting it together the right way, and they have to sift through and try to figure it out, that's when it goes sideways. So I think that the beginning stage is probably one of, if not one of the most important stages of the loan process. If that narrative is set correctly, it's smooth sailing for everybody else that falls in line behind, and they can do their job more effectively and a lot more quicker. What does that do? That makes us we're able to close more loans, and that's my take on it. It starts with the analyst.
Yeah, 100%. You're right. Up front, it needs to be structured, document heavy. It needs to have a plan. His job, and every loan officer, analyst, whatever their position is, their job is to create a file as fast as possible and as thoroughly as possible, so that the rest of the team, processing, underwriting, it can get in there and get out of there efficiently and without missing anything, right? So for the 14 to 21 day turnaround at that start, probably spend about 3 to 4 days building your file, like fully upfront. Your loan officer, you're going to get on the phone, you structure everything with them, you understand your client's income, you understand your client's assets, you understand their plan, why they want the house, what they're going to do with it, short term and long term. After you've fully created the narrative and you understand your client, you put that full package together, documentation, everything, into your loan file, send it over to your processor. Your processor will get in there probably a day or two turnaround for anything missing, right? So say Jason does a fantastic job, but it turns out that Ronan's hockey store in March sold 300 grand worth of hockey sticks compared to every other month where he sold 100 grand. Maybe there's something that was out of the ordinary or missed by Jason. So the processor would then say, hey, before we submit this to underwriting, let's clarify this question, right? And once all those questions are answered, and Ronan, tells us that he sold a bunch of hockey sticks to Canada that month.
But do you ask the client to give you color on that?
Yeah, I mean, up front, if Jason notices it, that's one of his questions.
So that's one thing that I was going to say. When I was really in the weeds, when I was only an originator, it's all the application. It's all the data finding. When you take the loan application and you talk with the client, that's where you're building your file. That's where you're asking the questions, and that's where you're understanding how to structure. Because non-QM is unique. There's no two files that are exactly the same. Whereas in your conventional world, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, for the most part, they're cookie cutter. That's why you can have a desktop underwriting where you plug in how much money do you make, how much assets do you have, what's the credit score. You press a button, and it spits out an approval.
Right. So you're saying writing credit is like an art. You're telling a story, right?
For sure. This case, because you have to analyze and understand every person's business and the nuances around it. I mean, we're working with entrepreneurs, successful business owners, successful contractors, investors who have multiple portfolios of assets and loans and structures. So when you're doing that, especially even now when I speak to clients, my whole conversation initially is the strategy, putting the deal together, finding out the nuances. I don't take the full application over the phone, but the questions I ask, I know where it can be and where it can go and how the deal is going to get done. And then from there, that structure is set up on the take right from the beginning.
Right.
And I think a lot of people lose sight of that, and they've simplified the process a little bit too much. Oh, we'll send you an application. Don't worry about it. Fill it out, and you don't ask the questions. And then when you're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't work,
Right.
and it's as simple as, and I mentioned this the other day on the podcast, is we have a client who just got his green card, and he went and got pre-qualified by a builder, and the guy told him, yeah, sure, no problem, you can qualify.
Right.
Well, he didn't realize that he doesn't have a credit score.
0 credit score.
I know what that's all about.
And now he's got a 720 credit score because we helped him in a matter of 3 weeks.
That's right.
The thing about
So-
credit score too is that you need credit. The score matters. The history matters too. Like
Sure.
I remember when I was buying Tesla. I bought my 2 Teslas. Right? I had 780 credit, but not enough history.
Right.
Wouldn't give me financing.
But
No,
again, it's exactly what I just said, what Maya just said. Identifying the issue, fixing the problem, so it's not a problem
Yeah, getting ahead of it, right?
Getting
To
ahead
the
of
best
it
of you can.
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Got the credit, 3 weeks,
Which is why pre-approval is so important.
so important.
Right.
Listen, pre-approval is different than a pre-qualification.
That's true.
We call it a pre-approval, but it's really a pre-qualification what we're doing.
Right.
Because you have lenders that will give you a pre-approval
Based on almost nothing.
based on how much you make, what are your assets, what do you think your credit score is, and that's it. And you generate your own pre-approval, but it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
We're actually collecting
And
all of your
verifying.
loan docs, verifying everything. So we're doing a pre-underwrite up front. That's a huge difference. As a buyer, or for someone who's looking to get into a home, if you get a pre-qualification, you're going to qualify for the
So
most
what's
part.
a pre-underwrite? Like, explain that to me.
So we're in essence we're underwriting the file up front as analysts, as loan officers, and we're looking at everything: your credit score, your income, your bank
So you
statements,
pull credit at that time?
everything, your assets.
Who pays for the credit?
We do up front, and if the deal closes, it's part of the
So
transaction.
it's a flow through.
Yeah, it's a flow through, correct. But the real key thing here is when you get a actual pre-qualification letter from MBank, you're qualified.
Right.
We've done everything up front.
Okay, yeah, because I've seen the pre-qualifications aren't worth the paper they're printed on. I mean,
Yeah,
We
exactly.
give it legs.
And a lot of times, 90% of the time, I get a call from the listing agent or the loan officer would, and they say, hey, what can you tell me about this client? And I can tell them how much money they make, if they got assets. I don't give them specific. I tell them, they make good money. Did you validate? Yep, I did. Assets? Yes, I validated. Credit score? Yes, I validated. Whereas others, they can call, no, I didn't validate. So you're going to have a lot more clarity. And as the market at some point will shift again. Right now, it's a really buyer's market, and a lot of markets where they don't have to close as quickly as some, because now there's a little bit more inventory. There's a little bit more in certain markets. But in markets that are tight, what we've done is we've issued full commitments where you're going in. We call it our Agility Advantage program. We'll do a full underwrite. We'll get all of your conditions cleared except for a contract, title, and an appraisal. So you're going in with 0 loan contingencies.
Right.
So it's in essence a cash offer. So you're competing with cash. Now you have the leverage because
Now, if you have a cash offer, can you still get financing?
100%.
a lot of people do that. They'll go in as a cash. I
'Cause-
just closed a deal for an investor of ours. He bought 6 condos. He went in as cash and got financing.
Right.
There's no loan contingency. So for the seller, they didn't care where the money came from. There's no loan contingency.
Gotcha.
So that's a lot of these things. You need to really have strong mortgage financing representation and real estate representation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of it. Now, tell me about bank statement and refinances. How does that work if you want to cash out? Is it the same concept?
It's
same-
identical. As long as the loan is supported by the income, you can get, the purchase money or a refinance. It makes no difference. It's just, there's other options for other, types of programs. So ultimately, your income qualifying for a set amount of money, regardless of what that money is, purchase or refi, same qualification.
What's your max loan amount on a purchase?
On a purchase, we can go up to 3 million, I believe, maybe 3.5. It really depends on the situation, though. There's exceptions that we grant. There's all kinds of things we can do in specific scenarios. So
I know we just did a 4 million. So I
That's
know
right.
it's
We had the
plus.
one that just called in the other day asking for 9. Is there anyone doing a $9 million refi?
residential?
Residential condo was $14 million valuation.
Not that I know of. I mean, there's a couple of people that say they do it, but I really haven't seen them close. Just that's my experience. But when you're getting out of those, it becomes more of a banking relationship with certain banks because you really can't securitize
Right.
the larger balance loans. It becomes harder, and not everyone out there that's buying in the non-QM space has the ability to balance sheet everything.
Can you explain securitization?
Yeah, so basically what it is they're banks that sell to intermediaries. And these intermediaries are, call it, like a fund-based type of intermediary that they'll raise money and they'll have warehouse lines and they'll buy all these loans and they have agreements and warehouse lines that allow them to hold the loans significantly longer on their line than a regular mortgage bank would. Where a mortgage bank typically lets you hold a loan for about 60 days max. Other companies allow you to hold these type of longer gestation lines will hold 180, 240, it depends. You just pay different premiums for it. But what happens is they take a pool of, let's just say, $500 million, $400 million. And it's based on a weighted average of all the interest, the credit score, the loan to value, and then they put it out to market. And then you have larger institutions, Neuberger Berman, Goldman Sachs, different consortiums of people that will bid on that pool. And they participate in the securitization and they participate in the spread of it and they make money off of the performance of the securitization. And then you have other institutions that are wholly owned by larger subsidiaries that balance sheet everything, whether it be an insurance company or a large conglomerate, that they'll take everything and they'll just put it on their portfolio balance sheet because the yield is high enough where they're diversifying their portfolio, not just into equity and not just into bonds, but into, notes and assets of this caliber. And historically speaking, through COVID, it was documented and supported that non-QM loans have performed far superior than your standard conventional Fannie Mae FHA loans. When the market defaulted and everything happened, and the non-QM loans performed significantly better. So
Why
that's
do you
why
think that is?
a lot more skin in the game. If
In the
you
form
can
of
buy
down
a
payment?
house, with 3% down, 3.5% down,
Right.
you don't have as much vested, but the average down payment for a non-QM loan is about 20%. So you have a lot more skin in the game where you don't have to worry about people walking away. You're going to think twice about walking away from $100,000 than you are going to be $5,000.
Right.
Is
Is there a DSCR product for? I know we do it for foreign nationals, but for domestic.
Yeah.
And
We're-
how is how is it treated differently?
It's the same.
Same
The
amount down
difference is-
25-30% still
Yeah, 20% you can do as well.
for DSCR.
Yeah, for DSR for domestic.
But only for a domestic, like for an American.
Yeah.
DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, you're talking about investment properties.
Yes.
They have to cover, and you need a credit score, obviously.
Can you so in my situation, I have a social not an American, which one am I considered? Foreign national or an American
What
resident?
kind of visa are you on?
E2.
Yes, you can qualify.
So you can use my credit, and so
Yeah.
I can get up to 20%.
Yeah, you can buy an investment property with 20% down.
Good.
Question. Back to the $14 million condo that the guy owns outright. 3 different banks, 3 million, 3 million, 3 million.
No,
Is
you
that-
can't do that.
That's a
Right.
syndicated loan. They're
Right.
not going to do that for residential.
Only so he could do it with 2 banks, a 3 million and a 3 million.
No,
No.
unless the banks choose to operate together and in conjunction, you'll be able to pull $6 million. But if you try to go to 3 different banks, the first bank to make the loan is in first lien position.
Okay.
The second bank is going to be in second and third, and no one's going to do that at those numbers.
Not on a single property.
To
Even
put that
if
in,
it's like a year apart.
well, to put that in
Doesn't
perspective,
matter. You're still going to be. You're
not
still
gonna
going
wanna
to be
do it.
behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make an
I
analogy.
didn't think so. I just
Yeah, I'll make an analogy for you really quick. Like if I said, I'll sell you this laptop for $100, and you each put 50 in. Who gets the laptop? It's the same thing with that house. If everybody put in $3 million, the first loan would get the house. Something goes wrong, burns down, whatever. They get their money first, but the second and third guy, they're fighting. You know what I mean?
done.
Yeah.
Explain.
So let's go on to 1099.
Yeah. Another self-employed.
You have a lot of self-employed form, but you have a lot of people that are contractors.
Yeah.
And again, they're in the same position. They get to write off a lot of things.
That's right. Yeah, 1099. Think about it like this, right? As a 1099, you generally, not always, but you generally have a business that you operate out of, like you are a single entity, whatever it may be, sole proprietor, whatever. You get paid. You could show bank statements. You could, and I would see income, right? But ultimately, it's a lot easier for you to not show me 12, 24 months of bank statements. You give me one 1099 for the year. That's it, right? It's just a simpler qualification method for
And
those.
how much of
self-employed
that
people.
1099 do you use?
Because there's no business, like expenses that we're seeing, we're not qualifying a bank statement. It's only 10% off the top. Yeah.
And then how do you quantify what they're making this year?
So for this year, there's a couple options. The easiest is just year-to-date bank statements. Sometimes you could do a P&L depending on the type of business you run, but most of the time it's just year-to-date bank statements.
So as long as you're showing the consistent deposits, you'll be fine.
That's right. Yeah, it's even less work than the bank statement loan for that part. You just show me that the numbers are about even from last year, and that's it.
And the same processing, cash out, and on a refinance, all of that's the same. It's just a
Exactly.
different qualifier.
Yeah. And to finish off, by the way, where I was at on that loan process, I mean, Jason structures up front. We get our processor. She gets in there, says that you're good. Go straight to underwriting issues and approval. Your appraisal turns around in these 2 weeks, right? We get that reviewed. Once those 2 things are done, underwriting approval and appraisal, I mean, you're off to closing.
What's the
Super-
quickest you've ever closed a loan?
That's a good question. I think probably around the 14-day mark is
No,
about
we
standard.
did a 12.
Well, we've done a 12.
Legally, you have to wait 12 days. Based
That's right.
On the thing. We could have done it sooner, but we did a 12.
That's exactly where I was going because it's a gray area. Yeah, I can get a loan fully approved as long as the appraisal's back same day, right? I could do your loan in 3 days.
What type of client would need such a quick close? Is it somebody who just found a deal but says, you got to close in 2 weeks, you better do it?
There's a lot of reasons.
And
Yeah.
you have a lot of people that come to us and say, hey, I fell out of the last person couldn't do it. They dropped the
Right.
ball. I have an appraisal done already. I can get it transferred to you, but I need to close.
Right.
I went in, no finance contingencies.
Exactly.
The seller's not going to extend.
Let me throw a curveball at you. Can you use crypto as a down payment?
If you liquidate it.
If you liquidate it. See, before COVID, actually during COVID, kind of after COVID, that was actually like we could still use crypto much more freely, but because of the fluctuations in the market over the last couple of years, now we can use it for reserves, but you got to liquidate that.
You can use it for the reserves.
Up
Yeah,
to
you
a
could use-
percentage.
you could use 60%.
Any
for
crypto?
reserves.
Non-liquidated?
Non-liquidated for reserves, yes. And
Explain
not
that. Explain
any
that.
crypto.
What do you mean for reserves?
So if you say you're qualifying for a purchase of a property, right? And you've got your money for your down payment, your closing costs. You also have to fund an account somewhere needs to have enough money to pay your mortgage for 3 to 12 months. It depends on the size of your loan. If you have a $4 million loan, we're going to need more reserves.
You have to show it or you have to fund the account?
You just have to show it in an account. That's it.
Okay. Any type of crypto?
So no, it's only the most stable currencies like
Ethereum
Bitcoin,
and
Ethereum.
Bitcoin.
Yep.
That's it.
And that's it. But I mean, a lot of people when because we've had some really big crypto sharks that we've used, that have used our services in the past, they'll just liquidate a portion of their wallet for the down payment,
Right.
leave the rest of it in there, show us the wallet for the reserves, and that's it.
I mean, you can use 401k as reserves. You can use your stock market holdings as your reserves. So, I mean,
You
that's
just have to see it.
Right.
correct.
right.
You don't have to liquidate. You don't have to
Doesn't have to
separate.
be
You don't
paid
have
to
to
anybody.
pledge it or anything like
Right.
that.
Right. Because then you don't have to liquidate. You're not up to any tax issues. Like, yeah. Okay.
And that just hedges a little risk, right? Like say you're buying an investment property and it doesn't get rented for 3 months. We know you're still going to be able to pay that mortgage for 3 months.
When you're underwriting, what would you say is, in your opinion, the biggest pain point or angst or surprise that the client has that you wish that if they knew in advance would make things easier for both of you?
Five. If you could give 5 key points as to
Yeah.
what clients should
5.
do.
I want 1.
What they should know up front kind of thing.
Yes.
Like, what are we looking
Yeah.
for? Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be open and honest. You generally, when you have your conversation with your loan analyst, a lot of people, they view this.
Where are they usually, if you're asking for that, means people are not. Where are they
Yes.
usually not open and honest?
Generally, it's your income.
What-
And I would
give me an
say
example.
same reason as you wouldn't show your tax returns, right? Because people get creative, accountants get creative, right? I don't want to show everything on my tax returns. I don't want everybody, or especially the government, to know everything about my business.
So give me an example of where.
So if you have your hockey store and there's, 1 month, like I said, you made $300,000 and you don't want to say that, I sold a batch of hockey sticks to Canada for whatever reason. Maybe it's political. Maybe your friends don't know about this.
So you're saying me as the consumer is understating my income when I'm telling to you, or is it the other way
Sometimes,
around?
yeah. Sometimes,
or they just don't even explain. And if they give
Right.
you an explanation, it's a very vague one. Oh, I had a good month.
exactly. And it's
And that doesn't fly, because it's so out of the norm.
right.
If it makes sense, it makes sense. And if it doesn't, we need to know. And I tell everyone, listen, I'm not the IRS. I don't care.
Right.
I'm here to help you. I just need to understand what it is so we can structure it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's as simple as you're telling a narrative, a story, right? Because when you present it to the underwriter says, what do I look for? Income, assets, the value of the home, and if this is going to be a safe bet, okay? That's really because they're ultimately liable too if a loan goes bad. So it's their license number. It's their credentials that also get looked at and frowned upon if they have too many defaults.
The MLO.
The
Everybody on the
underwriter,
team.
everybody across the board.
Right.
When there's a default, everyone gets looked at. So when you're doing this as an originator, as a loan officer, as someone who talks to clients, it's your obligation to understand everything and to explain and say, hey, I'm here for you.
And that's why it's critical up front that Jason builds that rapport with his client. Like, you can trust me. You can tell me everything about your assets. Tell me about your business.
I'm not the IRS.
Right.
I'm just
I'm
trying
here to
you.
help. I'm not here to hunt you down and find out everything. You know what I mean?
And
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and the better that the originator, the loan officer, understands the client and the actual product that they are purchasing, it just the underwriter won't run into these problems.
And it makes it a lot easier on your client when they're not
Yes.
answering these questions later for the third time.
100%.
Right.
So that's
So-
one. What else?
Number two, I would say be organized. A lot of people, when they run their
That's
business,
a good one.
it's incredibly difficult, I know, especially for small businesses, but keep good records. And if you don't have, if you can't keep track of your invoices, this, that, and the other, at least keep track of your assets. Don't have money moving left, right, up, down, whatever. Have solid, everything goes into this bank account. I hold reserves in this bank account. Just try to be organized. It makes it easier for everybody so that we're not chasing these, these crazy things. Number three, I think know your property. A lot of people will come into the deal for refinances like, oh, my property's, it's worth $3.5 million, whatever, right? We get the appraisal back. Sometimes it's only 3.2. It turns out their market's been declining for half a year and the client doesn't know about this kind of stuff. And,
Or doesn't want to know.
or doesn't want to know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes someone's put in a lot of money in renovations, and they're like, "Yeah, I'd like to cash out." And then we get the appraisal back. Their property's worth $500,000 more than they thought it was. It's a fantastic surprise, but then the loan restructures, right? So know your property. I think the next thing is be ready to be available during your loan process. A lot of people. There's two ends of the spectrum, right? There's people who are incredibly anxious and constantly in contact with your LO, And there's other people who are like, yeah, I'd like to get this property done, but I'm going on vacation in 3 days. If you could get me, everything I need to know in 3 days.
And then you need some paperwork.
And I'm trying to call them at 2 a.m. because they're in Antarctica. It's
Right.
a little difficult. So be prepared to be available. And then I guess number 5, have a plan. If you can't tell me exactly how this property is going to be used, if you can't tell me, what you use the money for, like I've had situations where a lot of people will come to a deal not really going in with a plan. And this happens a lot with investment properties because passive income is such what's the word? It's such a
Draw.
appealing figure. You know what I mean? Like I want to own an investment property, so every month I'm collecting rent. It's like, okay, but is this going to be short-term or long-term? Do you plan to furnish the house? Is your agent going to help you with this?
Right.
Like if you go in without a plan, then 2-3 months after the fact, you could be struggling. You may not be able to get that property listed, and it helps when you have a game plan. And so those are, I think, the number 5.
To recap, your top 5 for a client from an underwriting perspective. Be honest up front on your application.
Yeah.
Be organized with your paperwork and your monies and what's happening. Know your property, whether it be the one you're buying or whether it be the one you own.
Right.
Be ready to be available throughout the process.
Yeah.
Because we're going to need you. And the last one is have a plan.
Right.
Especially if it's an investment property, have a plan.
Exactly.
Now, Jason, for you, what are the top 5 things that you could say from an analyst when you talk to clients? What do you suggest or clients should be aware of, be ready for when they're looking to purchase a home or refinance? What do you suggest?
Well, I need to know right away. I want to know if they're looking to keep this property or if they're looking to sell it right away. I need to know that right away because
that's an exit strategy if there is one.
if there is one, absolutely. Is it a residence?
Primary
residence, second home, investment property. Yeah, let's see what else.
I think a lot of the stuff is translatable from the underwriting perspective.
Yeah, I would say as a team because we kind of
because I mean you line them up and you clean it up, right?
Right.
Because you're going to accept and have that primary interaction. You're more in the informational phase, right? Like explaining the product.
Is it a refi? Is it a purchase? What are they? How much do they look? Are they looking
How
to
are you
get out of it?
structuring
Can I do a double dip, which means that are they pulling money out of one home, and then they want to get a mortgage on another house? Can we do 2 deals with one client? I love that because that's.
I mean, that's easier for everybody for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's just a great. I'm always asking that question when they want to pull money out. When I spoke to Tram the other day, that was one of the questions that probably my 3rd question I asked her. Is she looking to purchase another property with the money she's going to pull out? And she wasn't right then and there, but because then they'll just offer that we could do a purchase. Where's she looking to buy?
It's hard to be on the spot for 5 new things after I did
you don't have to come
like Sam. You don't want to repeat what
Right.
I think there's so much.
Got it.
By the way, are you guys in a good mood right now?
always.
Okay,
love it.
then don't look at the markets if you guys are in
I
a good
just
mood.
got destroyed. I got a notification to lock the loans. Something just happened.
Yeah. So
Well, hold on a second, really quick, before you get into that. You
The
said
middle of
lock
my
the
phone.
loans. What is locking
Yeah.
your loan?
Oh,
It's locking the rate?
So lock the rate. I just got a notification.
How
The
long
market broke the key indicators and lock rates.
how long can you lock a rate for?
Typically, it's 30 days, and then you can get an extension.
Who's running the risk on that rate lock?
I'll run
The-
this down
us?
for you, actually. This is kind of like my forte. So
Oh,
when
give
you
it.
start your loan process and you submit your credit, your income, your assets, whatever, right? I give you your pre-approval. At that point, when you've got your contract or you're refinancing, whatever, the first thing that you get is a big packet that says, here's what your loan's going to look like, your monthly payment, your interest rate, everything. Now, that interest rate is priced to that day. Every day the markets change because we're non-QM, we're not
Yeah.
qualified mortgages. And like Myra was saying, we securitize, we trade these loans. Those interest rates fluctuate based on the market. And so when you see things like today, the market's moving, all you were getting alerts about these terrible things, that means that interest rates are moving. And so if you think today's a great day and the market's doing really well, your interest rate's good, and you foresee, for some reason, the market getting worse, you can choose to lock your rate to today. And you would do that in anticipation of things getting worse.
What if it does get worse?
If it does get worse, you're saved to that day.
But who's taking a hit on that? We're locking the rates.
It's interesting. So it's kind of like a train of links where upfront you lock with us, and we've locked with the secondary market. So we have people that we securitize these loans with. They've also agreed that they'll buy this loan at this rate. And so we have this agreement with them. We have this agreement with the client. So upfront, all you need to know is your rate won't change.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you can
Is there a
leave
fee for that?
There's not a fee for locking, and there's benefits to locking. Obviously, like I'm saying, like right now, if I locked yesterday, I'd be pretty happy compared to today. But if you think the market's going to get better, you can leave it floating or not locked.
As the markets go up,
Yeah.
the interest goes up, goes down.
So it's kind of the opposite.
Could be the other way around, right? There's
other
an
way around.
inverse relationship. So now, as the markets are going down,
It depends. It's really
No,
more tied to the
not.
10-year.
Unfortunately, right now, there's no rhyme or reason. The
Right.
last
Yeah,
time we
that's
saw
what I was
this,
gonna say.
the last time we saw this was COVID.
Wow.
Markets were all over the place, and they didn't trade because usually, if the stock market goes up,
Right.
bond market goes down,
Correct.
and they have to pay higher on yield.
Right.
If the stock market goes down, the bond market becomes more attractive, and rates become less, and it improves the pricing.
Which is good for mortgage
but
rates.
right
long
now
story
you're
short.
getting
Now you're
markets
getting both.
down,
You're getting hit both
and
ways.
markets going up because they're worried about inflationary pressures.
Correct. But today we had some inflationary numbers come out, and they were actually cooler than expected.
I thought that was for last month.
Yeah, it was.
There's
So,
nothing
but if
cool
there's a
about what's
1 month
going on in the
lag, so-
markets.
So the problem is they don't know what the effects of tariffs are going to be.
Right.
And that's the challenge. And because tariffs realistically are a tax. That's,
Of course, they're
that's
just
a
on a
reality.
tax in a country.
Yeah. So but the carry through comes when prices increase because of the tariffs. But we'll see what happens. I mean, listen, at the end of the day,
Well, long story short is that interest rates are usually a little more predictable than this. And with the markets doing bad, you would generally see a flight to bonds, which means the 10-year bond would, have lower yields. You could get better rates. It's generally a good thing. But today, like you're saying, no
But
rhyme or
what's
reason.
so crazy is that Trump's playing God with money and succeeding. Like if these
don't
are
look at the
tweets are
Yeah, but it's
trillions.
gonna go up, go down. It's gonna exactly what Mario just said. It's gonna bounce around like a
So-
ping pong ball.
Should you buy right now? Should you buy a house?
Oh my
right
God!
now?
Look, here's the thing: wearing my real estate hat, and I've had this conversation at least 10,000 times. Okay, when you're buying a house to live, it is not an investment, regardless of what people have thought they have been taught their whole life. It is a lifestyle choice, and I can explain to you very simply what I mean by that. If you want to live in a certain neighborhood with the identical house being in another neighborhood, it may cost 20, 30, 50% cheaper. If
Right.
you're in Miami versus Port St. Lucie, same identical house, same size, same lot, same finishes,
Sure.
same everything. The location is what dictates it. You're willing to pay that 50% premium to be in Miami, for example, because it's a lifestyle choice. Your house is not an investment.
So you
Anything
should
that-
buy all the time.
if you to live, you don't try to time it. You try to do it based on what you need. It is a liability to you because you're paying on an annual basis over a long enough time horizon. When you right size, retire, whatever you want to call it, then you take out the equity. You've got a 5-bedroom house, 4-bedroom house. Kids have now left the house. You don't need it. You move out. You right size. That is the investment part. Investment are cash flow producing properties that generate a return and a yield. So if to answer your question, is it a right time to buy real estate? Like equities, you cannot time it. If the business decision makes sense, it makes sense. If you're looking to buy for yourself to live, you absolutely need to live somewhere. So you either make a choice whether you're buying now for yourself or you're going to rent from somebody, but somewhere you're going to have to pay for it.
I'll give you an example. My community, there's two separate. There's a country club, and then they call it the Hunt Club. Same exact name of the community. One is a country club, and one is the Hunt Club.
Which one costs more?
We chose to live in the Hunt Club.
Smart
Country Club, at the time when I was buying, it was a $90,000 buy-in just to buy in. Then you had to join the Country Club, which is about $25,000 a year. Plus, you have to have food and whatever.
In
the
their
case may
HOA
be.
on top of that?
Oh yeah, and then there's HOA on top
Right.
of that. Okay, which is significantly higher because they have to maintain the grounds of everything. Our community, we have access to join the country club. There's no buy-in, But if you join the country club, you have to be a member, and that's it. And the HOA is significantly less. House prices have appreciated. Thank God we've done well, but it was a choice. Like you said, lifestyle for us, we weren't that.
What was the prices for a similar home in your neighborhood versus a country club neighborhood?
Actually, it's funny to say that. The country club in the beginning was less than ours because there was no buy-in.
Right. So that's what I would assume.
But with the buy-in, it made it, it paired it off. But at the end of the day, right now, the prices are high all over the place in this one area because you get a lot of people coming in and fixing and rehabbing and knocking down and rebuilding. So there's been a lot of that. And that's something, speaking to what you're saying, if a property makes sense, cash flows, is in a good area, like, you have certain markets that are appreciating and certain markets in Florida that are flooded with inventory people are stuck right now, and where they thought they were going to do phenomenal, they've turned their flip into a rental.
Yeah.
Because they have no choice.
That's right.
And speaking to that, something where you said have a plan, I'm going to Airbnb it, everything's going to be great. Well, you know what? Cost of furnishing it, cost of getting it up to par, finding a proper management company, cleaning company, all of that
Maintenance.
stuff.
Well, the other thing that people don't take into account, especially for rentals, long-term rentals are not as bad as Airbnb, is the annual rehab. Because if you're turning it around all the time,
Something's always
there's
breaking.
always something. And people, like, when you're in a long-term rental, you care about it less than you would as an owner.
Right.
But when you're in an Airbnb in a hotel, you care about it even less. So that stuff takes a beating.
Like I just had to replace the refrigerator in one of our properties.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Why?
Because who knows what they did to it. I mean, it was fine the last
They're
time.
cooking, they leave the door open for a half hour while they're cooking.
Well, I know people intentionally that like leave faucets, and I say when I know people, I mean, I know of people that are investors that have had this happen to them, where people will leave the water running, leave the lights on, leave the AC on, whatever. They're like, we're not paying for it. We might as well do it without any regard.
That's terrible.
Yeah, but it's common, right? How often?
I walk
the
around my whole
mentality.
house turning off lights. I tell my kids
All the time.
I don't own the
All the time.
electric company.
I'll tell you guys,
the water company.
As a side story, speaking about COVID, so I either live at work or at the hockey rink. And one of the parents at the hockey rink, he's a senior individual in the hotel space, and he was telling me what it was like during COVID. And he was saying just to get back into it, because Florida didn't see COVID like everybody else did. So 8 weeks of serious lockdown, everything else kind of whatever, kind of opened up real quick. So he said nobody was coming. So we had these, it's like a $500, $600 a night hotel room now. And they're like, we had these promos of like a night, $99 to just get people in. And then he goes, really quick, we realized that it wasn't worth it because the kind of people who were coming in were ripping it apart. Because they didn't see like the benefit. They just didn't care. It was so cheap, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, big corporations, you make too much money. But he's saying it. I was stripping linens and doing all this stuff because we were bare bones staff, and we're trying to just it was cheaper for them not to rent it out. So there's a cost to having
on
people.
our Airbnbs. My wife and I made a conscious decision to price higher and have a lower occupancy, because when we were pricing lower to increase our occupancy, my cost of rehab and replacing
That's the
and
one that people
everything,
do not take into account.
it wasn't worth it. We did the math, and we have higher end rentals. Like we have higher end amenities and everything, and we just decided it's not worth how much I'd make to replace the different things. So we just decided
This
that's
is a
not gonna
common
work
thing
for
that
us.
people overlook. They take the numbers, first of all. So whenever I do real estate investing in my pro forma, there's a couple of things that I keep as a rule. I never use 12 months worth of occupancy, always 10. One, I allocate for commissions, which is usually 1 month's rent that's split between buyer and seller, generally, and then 1 month worth of rental. On top of that, 10% for management fee, and then all the other expenses. If that number cash flow positives, it's an investment I'm willing to buy, right? Because within that, you also have to put an annual, and there's a contingency for this sort of rehab stuff. Most people do not look at it. They look at the gross numbers. Oh my God, it's a 12% cap rate. For sure, I'm going to buy it. They don't look into the weeds, but there's so many other opportunities. If you just have a formula which I would be open to share with anyone in this podcast if you email, Ronen at mbank.com, RONEN at mbank.com. I'll send it to you. I'll show you guys my pro forma. It's actually a very cool. I'm going to put it up on the screen one day, and I'll run you guys right through it.
That'd be a good one. So ultimately, you're saying if you're buying a house to live in, there's no bad time.
Buy a house to
buy it.
live in.
It's
You
a
got to
decision.
live.
And then you're saying if it's a rental property, don't try to time the market. If it makes sense, it makes sense.
It's all cash
Location,
flow.
location.
Right.
Yeah.
And what Myra, you were saying is you just pencil it out in the moment. You're not trying to buy a dip. You're not trying to buy a peak. If it makes sense, it makes sense.
So I think we should wrap it up.
Sure.
We're here. Thank you so much for your wisdom, everyone's wisdom.
Thank you.
Until next time, thank you.
I didn't know Alan was that smart.
Whoa.
Ching, ching, bling, bling.
That's right.
Chatter, you ain't talking money, then you